Welcome to recoverHER, the podcast where your healing journey begins. I'm Heather Novak, and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Tracy Oppenheim, a compassionate psychiatrist. Today, we embark on a path of recovery and self-discovery. We are dedicated to inspiring each and every one of you to overcome your struggles and live your best, most fulfilling life. Your recovery starts now, and we're here with you every step of the way.
It's only up from here, 'cause there's no one else that's me.
All right. Well, welcome to another episode of recoverHER. And this one is deeply meaningful because I'm here with Diana May, who is my cousin. And we have quite a story of how we have reconnected. And it really is very, very important to me. So I want to welcome you, Diana, to recoverHER. You're a seasoned yoga instructor and neurosomatic health specialist, which I can't wait to get into. You have lots of experience, over 15 years, helping people find relief from chronic pain, developing their yoga practice, coming back into their body. Your passion is rooted in empowering individuals, especially those who may feel uncomfortable in a fast-paced athletic yoga setting, to deeply connecting with their bodies, to feel good, moving again, and just learn how to be with themselves. Your unique approach combines mindful movement, somatic experiencing, and applied neurology to support the nervous system and reduce pain. It's amazing. You've reached over, thousands of clients, many over 50, like Heather, helping them not only find freedom from pain, but also foster a compassionate relationship with all parts of themselves. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your heart and your brain and your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I am honored to be here, and it's been such a wonderful reconnection with you, Tracy, as you are my family, and I was so excited to reconnect. I'm already tearing up, so I need to just, which is really great growth. I'm often the stoic person in my family. We connected over that, Tracy. But it was great to hear you as well, Heather. I listened to your intro story on the podcast and was really moved by it. So
Thank you.
great to share space together.
Definitely. I'm glad you're here. Well, maybe let's start with, I don't know, seems obvious to me, but I love that it's bringing up actual feelings, because you just said you have typically been, or maybe a past version of yourself has been so stoic, and boy, I really can relate to that, because I've said over and over again, I always wanted to be happy and stoic. All the other feelings could just take a back seat. And that's not how it is today. I welcome the full range of human emotion, and I'm really grateful when I can witness you feeling things and feel them myself. So thank you for that. But tell me a little bit about your reconnection with your cousin here, who I sit next to.
Well, I mean, I guess our reconnection started very, it's on Instagram. I saw you kind of pop up on Instagram.
Yeah. The
I think we had
positives of
been
social
friends.
media.
Yeah, and when the podcast came out, I was like, wow, you're doing all this stuff that I find that I'm so right there with you. And even though we didn't really grow up together, I think our shared experience, different but shared experiences, perhaps led us in a similar direction. And I knew more of you. I have some memories as a child. And obviously you were friends with my older sister a bit more. So I always sort of knew of you and had this extreme respect for the life you've lived. And I mean, gosh, you're so brilliant. And, I
Mhm.
have this pride from afar. I'm like, my cousin is the head of the psychiatry department at U of M. And she, like, all the, this
Mhm.
pride from afar. And yeah, so when I heard the podcast, I was just so, I was like, wow, we have so much in common.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it's just been a joy to just reach out and have some phone conversations. And yeah, I feel like with everything, there's joy to be in it. And of course, a
Mhm.
Yes.
little bit of grief, like, oh, I wish that it didn't take us as long, but
Mhm.
happy for now and some grief for what was lost.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that resonates. And I think for me, growing up, um, I grew up in a divorced family, and so I had more um, deeply rooted time with my maternal side of the family. That's where I felt
Mhm.
um, the most myself and the most at ease, just the most familiar. And so when we would be spending time together as kids, automatically, because it was through our father connection, when I was in that setting,
Mm.
and you've witnessed me
Mhm.
do this in many different settings, I would operate in shutdown. And
Mm.
so my dorsal vagal would be kind of taking over. Not that I had any idea what that meant when I was,
Mhm.
5 or 10 or whatever, but it was a way of just disconnecting. And it was very hard for me to, I don't know, like resonate from the
Mhm.
heart or be loving or even be playful. So it's interesting. I have some, and even as I'm looking at you right now, you look so much like your mom, which is really beautiful. But when we would be together, when I would be with Diana and her two
Mm.
sisters, I I often had this desire to connect, but at the same
Mm.
time had a sense of not belonging where I was, and not just not feeling at ease. And I do remember, even though it wasn't like a lot of time together, I do remember your mother, actually, who I had very limited
Uh-huh.
contact with, always like kind of feeling like sunshine in that
Uh,
setting in a way, or like yeah, I just remember her smile, and she was always very kind. So it's
yeah.
fun for me to see her
Through you.
face in you. And so I know that I would have these moments growing up, because on my maternal side of the family, I have
Mm.
easy connection with my
Mhm.
cousins, and I had this feeling of wanting to connect. Like, it's a very familiar feeling, like of
Mhm.
wanting to connect. And maybe I would make these little outreaches even when I was in college. Um, maybe I could connect with you guys, and then I could never sustain it.
Uh,
And I felt, that grief I get, because
mm.
I feel like, because I was older, that it was somehow like my
My
responsibility
responsibility.
for us to all like be together and see that connection through.
Hmm.
Um, but we are here today, and I love the fact that we see the value in the body and the nervous system and the healing, and that it's just, if I'm so grateful, like, to the weird little universe that we live in, that we get to play together now, like, for the rest of our lives, if we
Yeah,
choose.
exactly. Exactly. And the slow return to the body and all the many ways, because as you're sharing your story, I'm like, when I was a child, I was also very shut down, but I
Mm.
also I was the youngest. And looking back, this was unconscious at the time, but looking back, I was the peacekeeper.
Mm,
I wanted everyone to be happy and calm So I would do whatever was needed to make sure everyone was happy and calm. And that included a lot of um, smiling and appeasing and
Mm.
finding the silver linings and um, always being cheerful and um, and bypassing a lot of what was going on to the point where I was completely disconnected from
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the turmoil that happened in my childhood. So
You said you're
I
the youngest of 3?
yes, I am.
A
Yeah,
all sisters?
all sisters.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I was very disconnected from my body, and I remember when I first found yoga,
Mm.
my oldest sister Nicole, I took me to my first yoga class, and she
Mm.
took me because I was highly stressed out and very
Mm-hmm.
sick and had no way to manage
Mm.
my stress.
Mm-hmm.
So I had, you know, essentially just got really sick and dropped out of school and was just in
Mm.
sort of a complete shutdown. And my sister Nikki was like, "Well, yoga helps with stress,
Yeah.
so let's go." And I
Right.
was like, "I'll give it a shot." Because at that time it was still alternative. It was like in Michigan in the early 2000s. It was just
Mhm.
not, it was still
Mm-hmm.
mysterious and alternative. And I would not have been caught dead going to the gym or,
Mhm.
like, I don't know. I was very much like, I don't want anything to do with sports or competition or mainstream anything. So yoga seemed weird enough for me. I went there and I got on the mat and
Mm.
it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I was like, I don't think I've ever felt my body until that
Wow.
Oh.
moment.
Tell me what
Like
it
I
was
didn't
like
know.
walking in. Did you bring equipment? Did you bring your own mat? And walking into that first class, what did it
Well,
feel like?
yeah, like my older sister's a very great researcher and also a
Mhm. Like this
genius.
one?
In
She's
fact,
so smart.
yeah, she's, she, hi, Nicole. She used to make me call her genius as a child.
That's
So she was not
amazing.
my sister. Yeah.
Nicole the genius. Got it.
Nicole the genius, and she really is. So, like a good sister and the genius that she was, she researched everything we would need to, she called the studio and
Got
asked
it.
a lot of questions. So we came
Mhm.
prepared, but also the studio, it was a Ashtanga primary class, which
Okay.
is very
Oof.
vigorous actually.
Yes.
But the studio, my sister's like, we've never done yoga. We don't
Mhm.
work out. Like, we don't, this is brand new to us. And they're like, just come, it'll be great. Just bring a mat, So we came in prepared on paper,
Right. That's what I was gonna say.
but yeah, I don't even remember the class. I just remember thinking it was really hard. I was sweating. I don't know if
Yeah.
I've ever sweat before, like
Sure, sure.
honestly. Um, and I was like, wow, I know so much about brainiac stuff and academic stuff.
Mm.
I'm an academic as well, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I know so much about a lot of stuff, but I know nothing about
Yeah.
me.
When you feel
Yes.
your own
I don't
body
know. I don't know
internally.
how I'm feeling. I don't know
Mhm.
how my body is. I don't know if I'm strong or weak. I don't know
Yeah.
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And now I'm aware I don't know. So I was hooked.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's such a human experience too, because we talk so often with other people about the fact that they just don't know how they feel. And, you can hold up a chart of different feelings, and literally, sometimes we all can be stumped.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember one of my very first therapists during the same time period got me to understand that, you can have multiple feelings at once. And because
Mhm.
I didn't know that, I had this intellectual understanding of happy is this and sad is this.
Yes.
Right.
And
Yes.
since I was feeling both things, I was confused and
Mm.
it canceled each other out. And it was just this numb
Mm.
thing.
Yeah, that's a
Mm-hmm.
So I
good
was
way
like,
to
I don't know.
explain it. Really
Yeah.
good way to
That
explain it.
that really tracks for me personally. And this idea of not knowing who you are,
Mm.
when you don't know who you are, your only option is to become what others
Yeah,
tell you.
the
So,
chameleon of it all, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when you
Yeah.
say like I don't was I strong? Was I weak? What was I'm still working through that
Mm.
experience in my somatic practice, just hanging out with my body, because I realized like I still have to continually let go of this messaging that I received about who I am or what I'm capable of or what type of body I have or should have. And that pre-programming has really dictated how I treat my body, how I
Mm.
show up for my body, what I try to do or allow myself to do. Um, you know, Heather's so sick of me because I've in some ways because I've lately been just doing like a lot of play with my
Oh, it's so
body,
great to
and
witness.
like I'm trying to learn how to do a cartwheel. I'm trying to learn to do like these forward rolls, shoulder rolls,
Like
like back.
side somersaults. It's very
Yeah.
cool to witness the playfulness of it all and kind of owning your own agency. Because so we talk about it an awful lot that we are the creators of our own lives. And it's very cool to witness the playfulness of it all kind of coming back online and learning as adults that we're all sitting here as adults that we can kind of just love on those little kids from the past when we were so we were unable to access the best parts of us at all times, you know.
And I wonder, Diana, what comes to mind for you from your, just your expertise, um, in that, I had a lot of messages around, being careful and this and
Mm.
that as a kid. So
Mm.
like I didn't explore a lot with my body. And so
Yeah, that's interesting.
even now when I'm trying to do some basic movements that most of us did as kids, I didn't have that experience as kids. So when I'm trying to do them now, the mind is saying like you're not safe,
Mm.
particularly around my neck, for example. So when I'm trying to do like a backwards roll or
Mhm.
shoulder roll or whatever, I have this idea that somehow that's not safe for me
Mm.
to do with my neck, for example. And so that
Mhm.
will get in the
All these
way.
limiting beliefs that we have. I have
Yeah.
an 18-year-old son that Tracy's been in Sam's life since he was in first or second grade. How old was he?
Mhm.
8, 9, something like that. And 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 I would hear her say all the time, and Sam was the one that said, "Why do you keep telling me to be careful? Like, what does that even mean?" Because I don't think that was a part of my vocabulary, but he would hear it and be like, Why do you keep saying that? I don't understand. It didn't compute at all."
Yeah, because he was so used
Yeah.
to throwing his body around.
Yeah. Why I have so much I could say. I mean, we could have a whole podcast just about this because, you know, I'll share a couple things. One, I just worked with a client, one of my clients earlier today, who has some pretty significant knee injury, um, very old knee injury, including some partial reconstructions. And we've been working for a long time, and we did some ankle mobility work,
Hmm.
just like getting the ankle. And he's in his 60s, so
Okay.
we did some ankle mobility work, and I was like, "Oh, how'd that feel?" And he's like,
Mhm.
I'm having some pain on my knee right where it's been reconstructed, and like I'm so curious, or like I'm maybe scared
Mhm.
that
Hmm.
something's happening. And so I just start to ask more questions because I don't
Right.
know if that's good or bad.
Right.
Because
Sure.
oftentimes our brain is gonna perceive, if you have a lot of like beliefs or protection around a certain area and there's new sensation, your brain could just
Mhm.
perceive that as pain when it's really just
Hmm.
something new.
Moving through it.
So
Mhm.
and so I'm like, I know he walks around, like he takes walks with his dog, and um so I know he puts weight on that ankle and that knee, and it's okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
And we were on our backs and the feet were elevated. There's no weight bearing going on, but we are exercising the ankle. So I'm like, like it's possible that like we want to be with that fear and we want to be with the sensation in the knee, because those two things right now are coupled together.
Yeah.
So the sensation in the knee is an automatic fear. But
Mhm.
like, what if we can just be with both things, and like maybe like you can be with this sensation
Right.
and be with the anxiety it brings up,
Mhm.
and
Mm-hmm.
maybe that can uncouple some of that, because
Yes.
I'm thinking it's safe based on what I know about my client and what we were doing, but I don't want to discount his fear.
Sure.
But if I were to just say, oh, no, it's fine, then he
Yeah.
doesn't get to learn how to be with these two things.
Right. You're giving him the ultimate permission to let those
Yeah.
2 experiences coexist at the same time.
Mm.
They exist at the same time. Like you can be happy and you can be sad at the same
Right.
time. There can be
Right. Which is what
sensation
you said
and
earlier.
fear at the same time.
Sure.
And it doesn't mean they don't cancel each other out. So
Mm.
I try to give people a little more space. So
Mhm.
Tracy, I'm like, yeah, is somersaulting safe for your neck? I don't know about your neck history to
Mhm.
know
Yep.
and I don't know exactly what you're doing. So I can't say, is that safe or not? But for some people, somersaulting is not going to be safe for their neck. I work with plenty of people where I would
Mhm.
not recommend that. And I work with plenty of people who would love to be able to somersault and can, and just maybe need to work through some stuff. Um, One of my sayings, I just was working with my friend Monica Bright. We're doing a training on how to teach people with chronic pain and injury. And one of the things she says that I really abide by is that the body is designed to move, and it can move in the ways it's prepared to move. So if your life's goal is to do somersaults, even if you have an injury, like there could be a way to try to prepare the body to do that safely. Um, I don't know enough about you and your neck and your movements to give my professional specific opinion, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm just really after, and I'm so grateful that it all translates. Like wherever you go, there you are. I'm
Mhm.
just after freedom,
Right.
like real freedom. And I feel like my body holds the keys to that kingdom in some way. So that what I have noticed is that the more free I can feel in my body, the more, less restricted I feel in
Right.
my body, then I'm so much more creative and free in all the areas of my life.
Clearing out all of the blockages wherever you feel that stuckness. And yoga, she's talking about some movements that you've uncovered in primal movement, but you've also been able to let that flow over into your yoga practice as well. But mm, yeah, yoga is an interesting ongoing study of your own internal dialogue that you have with your own body.
Yeah, I want to know about your experience, Diana, in terms of your yoga journey. Like when so you shared your first experience with Nicole, but how did you find your way to this this point, like with all this
Mhm.
knowledge you have, like
Yeah.
coming from where you're coming from today? Because I imagine it was probably pretty easy to get swept up in the perfectionism aspect of the yoga early on, or maybe not. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like anything, it's such a nuanced journey, but I started yoga in my 20s, and I say I grew up in the power vinyasa world. And actually, for a while, that was really empowering to me. I was in my early
Mm,
20s, and I
Mhm.
did find some athleticism in myself, which I had never had
that's
before.
cool.
And I felt, I'm like, oh, I can do some hard things. And that was really healing for me at that time. And at the same time, it was also caught up in this aesthetic world of
Mhm.
go further, faster, harder, get the
Push,
deeper
push,
back bends,
push.
get the
Yeah.
inversions. It's very aesthetic based.
Mhm.
And so it was another way to be perceived in a
Mhm.
certain way, or to
Mhm.
Yeah.
perform and bypass what my body was really needing. And, and as a teacher, I got to see that postures look so different in so many different bodies. And
Mm,
so it was a slow progression to understand. I was like, okay, I really just want people to feel good in their bodies. And that just looks so different for everybody. And I
Mhm.
would see people really struggle with things. And for a while, it's like, okay, well, we're not coming onto our yoga mat to be happy. We're here to like face
Mm-hmm.
our like some discomfort. And that carried me for a long time. But then I just got to notice like the yoga I was teaching in studios is very exclusive. A lot of people who really had some injuries or had some body dysmorphia or
Mm-hmm.
looked different or had some accessibility issues, they couldn't come into the classroom, even if I said everyone's welcome. It was just started to be so much more clear that everyone wasn't welcome.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
and so I had to really reckon with that because and I can't have a public class where everybody is going to be happy or
Mm.
feel welcome. So like I have to build my capacity to disappoint people.
Mm-hmm.
And also I can also work in a way that is more in alignment with what I want to do, which is share this deeply healing practice with people who need it. And the studios are amazing for a certain type of people. And it's a vast, I'm not saying it's one type, but it's a lot of people can go to studios, but
Mm-hmm.
it does exclude a lot as well. So I want to really be part of I want to be able to share it with people who really need it, who aren't comfortable in studios and
Yeah.
aren't
That's
comfortable.
important.
Um, yeah.
And
So
how do you
I,
do that? How do you
Yeah,
make
yeah.
someone that isn't embodied, doesn't even know, but just walks in and just finds the whole experience extremely daunting? I mean, you've shared before on previous podcasts what it was like for Tracy to walk into her first yoga class. And gosh, I don't remember when mine was a little bit more of that hatha vinyasa flow. I mean, boy, back in the day, Ian was doing a lot of gangster rap. And with the Cast Brothers, it was just, it was um, a lot of I mean, it was exactly to just like what you said you needed in your 20s, exactly what I needed to at that point in my life. But, I'm thinking back to some of those early experiences. How do you make those that walk in feel safe enough to explore all of the different asanas that are present?
well, I have to lean into not doing it by myself.
Hmm.
It's not I'm trying to build off work of other people as well. So I'm
Mhm.
not the only one doing this. And so finding that community and seeing how they've done it. Um, but what has transformed the most for me is actually teaching online because
Mm.
I found that through teaching online, I learned a lot about myself, that how I was teaching was still very tied to who was in the room. I'm very
Okay.
empathetic. People are in the
Mm.
room and I know if they're happy,
Yep.
I know if they're upset, I
Mm.
can really feel what they're feeling. And that influenced how I was teaching.
Sure.
And
Okay.
so teaching online, I don't have their
Mhm.
physical presence influencing me. So I
Mhm.
really got a lot more clear on what
Okay.
I needed
Right.
in this moment. So I just started teaching more to that and it drew different types of people in. And when you practice online, not a lot of people can get to studios. So and
Mhm.
a lot more
Yes.
people feel safer in their own space. They're not being
Mhm.
witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
If they have to stop and go to the bathroom, they can do it. Like it's not a
Mhm.
whole thing. Um, so I actually find that teaching online is amazing for accessibility issues.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
And it's
and I
interesting
use
that
a lot of props.
do you. It's interesting that you say that because online, people ask about receiving psychiatric care or psychotherapy
Mm.
online, and there's this automatic assumption that if you're not, in the room to co-regulate with someone, that it's going to be less effective. But for many people, just having a little bit of
Distance.
distance makes a big difference, can make them feel actually safer to
Mhm.
to open up and to be. So you were saying with props, you have a toy chest.
Yeah, I mean, I work with chairs and blocks and straps and stretchy bands and blankets and bolsters. Like like it's fun for me to work with people to figure out how to make a movement more accessible or feel good in their body or
Mhm.
access something in their body. So to me, it's like a fun. It is a. Could I say this? It's like a fun game, and like, oh,
Yeah.
how can we, like,
Yeah.
Bringing
how
it
can we do
all
it?
the way back, and I
Yeah,
know, nothing is basic, but bringing it all like, finding joy again in a forward fold, finding joy in if you've never had it, doing a somersault, knowing that you're safe doing a back bend, some type of inversion, even if you are using especially if you're using blocks, laying on your bed
yeah,
and putting your feet up the wall, oh my gosh, I
yeah,
think you can offer so many people some valuable information and hope along with that.
I think it's funny too because I think it was probably like 2 years or so into to me,
Mhm.
going to yoga on a regular basis where I wasn't even actually doing a forward fold, meaning like I had this idea of what I was trying to imitate. Like I had heard the words
Sure.
about what you were supposed to be doing, but because like an actual forward fold wasn't accessible to me in the way that
Mhm.
maybe it was, to
Mhm.
you, that
Mhm.
as soon as someone showed
Oh,
me that
yeah.
modification, and I had no ego attached, I would have
Mm-mm.
modified the fuck out of everything. Like it just was like in the studio setting that wasn't, there wasn't that option. But when someone really like helped me modify, like with blocks,
Right.
bending my knees, really understanding it 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 opened up so much more than just doing whatever I was doing
Yeah, it creates
before.
so much more energy flow when I give myself permission to bend my knees in a forward fold.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%. And I grew up in the power vinyasa world and
yeah.
in an era where props were seen as weakness. Like you only do
Mm.
it can't if you can't touch the ground, then you use blocks and it's seen as like this.
Yeah.
People get
Mm.
very competitive in
Yeah,
yoga. And even though we
that's
say like,
so
oh, it's not
ironic.
competitive, like people are competitive. So um they don't want to use the blocks. And blocks are not weakness. To me, they add so much richness to each posture. They open up energy channels. You can
Mhm.
actually like you can make a posture
Uh-huh.
harder with props or easier with props or novel with props. Our body loves novelty and props can give us
Yeah,
that. And
yeah.
props are playful and
What do
not
you
to
think that
everybody, but
what do you think that is as far as the is it just sort of yoga reveals some of our, shadow side, I guess? That competitiveness nature. I've been one of those row center girls. I
I've been
have.
there.
And, it's so interesting today where
I have not been.
where I just wanna be, another bozo on the bus. I just wanna be I'll go anywhere now, which is huge amount of, flexibility,
Mhm.
that kind of flexibility that I maybe lacked
Yeah.
before. I had more strength rather than flexibility. And now I'm almost more I'll go anywhere and will have comfort anywhere. I belong anywhere that I lay my mat. But I
Mhm.
if I have a preference, it's usually the back row. And it's not
Yeah.
by the door to sneak out for shavasana before that's done. That's the best part. But what do you think that competitive nature, where does that derive from and what is that we so often witness inside the yoga rooms?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say it's not just in the yoga room. I think
No.
it's on a societal level, and our culture is very competitive. And I think that seeps into
Mhm.
this ancient practice.
Sure.
And I do think yoga, even if you are competitive on the yoga mat, hopefully you're still absorbing some of the deeper teachings of
Mhm.
yoga.
Right.
But I always like to say that one of the worst things, and I'm being sarcastic, so
Sure.
my voice doesn't always
Yeah.
convey, but I'm sarcastic right now, okay?
Okay.
One of the worst things you can be called is average.
Mm.
People don't like being average. If you
Mhm.
were to say like, "Oh, you are so average."
Oh
Right.
Like
god.
that
Woo!
can be it's like, right, I feel that in my body, like, oh,
Yeah.
right. And I think
Hmm.
in yoga, we speak to how beautiful the middle path is. Yet
With all
culturally,
things life, sure.
yeah, culturally we like to be special. We like to be
Mhm.
unique. And there's so much joy in that as well. But I think hopefully in yoga, we really do learn to embrace the subtleties and the nuance.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's really where the magic is. Like, if I can find joy in the average mundane things like doing my dishes or
Mhm.
brushing my teeth or just getting out of bed, like these are the things that I do every day that are not going to be on Instagram or on a movie or,
Right. Right.
like it's boring. Like
Mhm.
that stuff is kind of, but that's where we get the most opportunity to live our lives. And
Hmm.
so I think in the yoga room, it's just like we get to practice that and practicing, like, oh, this,
Mhm.
like Tadasana, just standing. It's not a fancy pose. It's not going to get the likes on social media, but it's, um, like, if you can enjoy Tadasana, you can enjoy your life. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
That's cool.
Mhm.
Um, and if you can hear something like, oh, just do a basic pose, and that can, you have the
Mm.
tools to go in deep and like be with those simple things. Wow, I mean, that's freedom.
It is
Hmm.
freedom.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, your yoga practice so beautifully translates. You just explained that perfectly into it seeps into all other aspects of your life or the reverse. You're bringing all of the ways that you are, you're bringing them to your mat wherever you happen to be. So
Yeah.
yoga is it just tricks you in the best possible
Yeah.
way. You might want to,
Yeah.
back in the 90s, everybody wanted Madonna's biceps and you're going to sure you keep coming, you're gonna get that. But what it really works on is the core, the internal. It just changes you on a metabolic level, and it tricks
Yeah.
you into spirituality too. I found that to be true.
Yeah. And it's like, I just had this thought around, I don't know why, because I don't have babies, but if you look at a baby, like every parent is like, oh my gosh, look at my baby. And you look at the baby and you're like, it's a baby.
Right.
But the
Yes.
mother knows that that baby is so cute. Like, you find so much
Right.
joy in the way its face moves or the quiver of its
Mhm.
lip or like it's the twinkle in the baby's eye. Like, and you,
Hmm.
it's, it's just kind of like any other baby. But when you
Yeah.
have that lens of like, oh no, this is amazing. Like,
Mhm.
we can cultivate that for ourselves, on
Hmm.
our mats. And to me, that's where yoga is really powerful.
Hmm. And I think, what you just said, the word that came to mind for me as you were speaking was attunement, and
Yeah.
how important attunement is. And I can feel, whether I'm having a conversation with you on the phone, Diana, or um, sitting next to Heather. Like, there's real magic when you can be present and then also be attuned to that other person. And I have experienced some moments. It's not all the time, but I have experienced some moments with myself, physically, where I'm creating space to be attuned to myself. And I
Mhm.
think I'm grateful when that happens. So just the way that, a parent is, like, oh my gosh, like, filled with wonder about something external, like their child.
Mhm.
It's so cool when you have those moments with yourself. And when I have
Yeah.
those moments with myself, I'm not doing anything remarkable. I'm just simply creating, or maybe it is remarkable. I'm just creating the opportunity and the time and the space and the presence with my body to be like, wow, I'm here with
Yeah.
you. I'm here with you. Do
It,
you? Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just thinking about what you said earlier. It's just about finding the joy and being present in the everyday mundane.
Yeah.
Brushing your teeth.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not like brushing my teeth every day in pure bliss. That's not,
No, but it's such a good
but
reminder,
I,
though. It
yeah,
really is. It's a great reminder because that is where I find, if you can find, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to pull a geographic. You don't have to go on a vacation to feel
yeah,
alive and aligned and open and free. You can get
yeah,
that by simply looking in your backyard and actually seeing, you see,
Mhm.
you're present with the bird in the backyard in in
yeah,
in awe because of that. Like it's a great reminder for me to think about because it allows me, in all honesty, to sort of slow
Mhm.
down.
yeah. Well, and it's the cornerstone of regulation in our nervous system.
Mhm.
If we can be in pleasure, and like pleasure is the cornerstone of safety. Like if
Mhm.
we're, because
Yeah, it's so
oftentimes when
true.
we're feeling pleasure, feeling awe, we are connected to our body. We feel that softening, or there's some kind of connection to our bodies. And when we can slow down and enjoy life, like that's a sign we're showing our nervous system we're safe.
Right.
If you don't feel safe, you can't feel pleasure because
Mm.
you're on alert.
It's
Yeah.
so true.
So cultivating pleasure in the mundane is hugely important and very
Mhm.
accessible. And I do advocate for traveling if you can and having bigger experiences if you can, but
Mhm.
I don't want, or having a bigger yoga posture if
Mhm.
you can
Mhm.
and that's what you want. Like I advocate for that too. I just don't want anyone to feel like they have to get a deep back bend to feel
Sure.
joy in their body, or they
Right.
have to take a trip to feel joy in their body. Like
Mhm.
that you don't need that, or to
Mhm.
have a complete absence of pain to have pleasure in your body. Like you
That's a good
don't need
reminder.
that.
Mhm.
Um,
Do you see, like, as you're witnessing the people you're working with, can, like, do you track their kind of evolution? Meaning,
Mhm.
say day one they're with you, you're hearing their story a little bit as I'm sure as you're navigating kind of their yoga practice, and can you tell, like, like, what are you noticing in people, not about their physical posture but just about what they're holding? Like, can you feel into the fear or the, like, resistance or the blockages, and then what's that like for you to kind of witness that shift over
Yeah.
time?
yeah, I mean it's the best.
Mm.
If it's I'm addicted to it.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's the best. When I see somebody
Yeah.
experience something for the first time, like it's kind of magic and I'm obsessed with it. So
Mm.
I love, and I don't get to see it all. Like I'll never get to see it all, but there are certain things I've gotten to witness, including people who for years have, because of surgeries,
Mm.
have been so disconnected from their body,
Mhm.
they don't date. They're
Mm.
too,
Oh, wow.
there's a too much dysmorphia in their
Mhm.
body where they don't want to be intimate with other people and they don't even consider it and they have better things to do.
Mm.
Mm.
Um, which, hey, I'm all for that as well. But I did have one client after many months of working together, they decided to date,
That's
and
so
it
cool.
was like a huge thing. And like I really, even if it doesn't work out, because
Mhm.
sometimes it doesn't, but I'm like, just the willingness, like seeing
Right.
people being willing to do something new is amazing. I also love hearing when some of my clients get off medications. Like it's
Mm.
not as, it's it's maybe not as like fun or exciting, but like when they're like, "Oh, I don't take pain medication at
That's
night
Right.
ama
anymore."
that's
That's
I'm like,
amazing.
"Wow, that's music to my ears."
right.
So,
Watching people come back online
yeah.
is a big, incredible honor and joy that I find in the rooms. For instance, in recovery meetings, I just find it miraculous to watch women in particular, but everyone on a human level. Crawl in from the wreckage and walking in, being brave enough to walk into a brand new situation like a yoga room. And like you said, you walked into Ashtanga. That is intimidating, whether
Yeah.
you knew that or not, just being able to be brave enough to cross that threshold and then to keep coming back.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
find it so cool when people get addicted to good things, right? I mean, too much of
Yeah.
anything is not
Yeah.
fantastic way to live. Like you said, yoga, this whole yoke teaches you about breath and about the middle of the road instead of the high highs and the low lows, maybe learning a little bit more about moderation and peace within your body. So it is incredible to witness. That's very cool you get to do that.
I was curious because you talk about you know yoga translating to other areas of your life, and I know that um, you live a lot of your principles out loud, which I think is so beautiful in the way of activism. Was that something that was always alive in you, or did that
Mhm.
come through the yoga?
It came before the yoga,
Okay.
Mhm.
actually. I I became an activist, I guess, in college, which is
Mm.
maybe a little bit cliche, but that also stemmed from my childhood of growing up very counterculture. And I was in a punk band and I listened to punk music, and a lot of good punk music has amazing social commentary and opened my eyes to some
Mm,
injustices in the world. And then I went to college, and I really wanted to be a business, like a CEO of a marketing firm, and I attribute, which I'm not like
that's
that
so
at all
wild.
now, but I wanted people to listen to me. And I think
Ah.
that's how I perceived that would happen. And so I took a business class or an economy class, and I
Mm.
learned about, you extract resources from the earth and make products and sell it. And then
Mm,
I'm like, that seems like it just didn't make sense to
Mhm.
my academic brain. That
Mhm.
model didn't make sense. So I took in a natural resource economics class, or in a natural resource class,
Mhm.
and realized that we're just totally exploiting the earth. And
Mm.
I just became obsessed about that. So I
Mhm.
was an academic and activist for a long time. And then when I moved out to California, I was exposed to, I'd never camped. I didn't know anything about being in nature or being in the
okay.
wilderness, but I moved to California and got exposed to that, and had really a profound awakening in
Mm,
my first camping trip and waking up in the trees. And
Mm.
I was like, oh, this is what, like, I only thought yoga could give me this feeling of
Mhm.
peace, but actually
Right.
being in nature can give me the feeling of peace. So I really dedicated my life to protecting the earth. And
Mm.
that's, yeah, I've just all over the board have done work in that way. So,
mhm. And how is it alive in you now?
well, we were chatting
Yeah.
before we hit record, and on my skeleton, you see this little medal here, and
Mhm.
it's a medal I just won for helping to protect the wolves. So, but I'll just start with a bit of a backstory, because for so long, because I love the earth so much and I connect with it so much, and before I did any somatic healing or a lot of really deep work on myself, I think in a way I just didn't think I was worth saving. And
Mm.
so, and this is so sad to admit, but I was
Mm,
like, if I can't fix myself, at least I can leave the world better.
Mm.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry.
Mm.
So yeah, so I just like dedicated every ounce of energy to protecting Earth and trying to leave it better, because I didn't think I could change myself, or like I had this I had this deep dark secret that I was somehow horrible and
mm,
unlovable.
mhm.
So rather than working on that, I was like, I
Mhm.
feel love in the
Mhm.
trees, so I will protect the trees. Like that's the closest I'm going to get. So I spent years. I s- I a couple of the projects I did, I worked 3 years in the national park system, restoring a
Mm.
native dune ecosystem and
Mm,
protecting endangered species. And that led me to realize that the national park had a plan to kill these native elk that are endemic to California, and
Mm.
they're they're only at 1% of their original population. Like they're not doing great in the
mhm,
scheme of like species survival, and the Park Service was planning to kill them in order to protect commercial ranching operations. So I spearheaded
mm,
this whole people power campaign to like
Mm.
protect these native elk. And that like it was a national campaign. It was highly
mm.
successful, and I just invested all my energy into it. And I also started a nonprofit
Oh my
where we
gosh.
yeah,
So
where
did
we
it leave time for you then to develop
oh
and evolve and heal internally? You were so it was almost, I mean, it's an incredible endeavor, but almost a distraction a little bit from
yeah,
your own growth.
Or pain.
yeah, and it
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, all of the above. Like I care so deeply, and that has always been true, but my compulsion,
Mhm.
and it was like I needed
Mm-hmm.
to do this, and if I didn't
Mhm.
spend every waking moment working on the things that needed help, like then I just I couldn't not do it.
Right.
So there was a bit of a compulsion
Mhm.
aspect, and I got a lot of praise for it
Mhm.
Yes.
because it's amazing work and it
Yes.
needs to be
Mhm.
done, and it's so
Mhm.
true and authentic to my heart. So like it was a confusing, like I got a lot of praise, but I also like needed to slow down and needed to
Mhm.
have boundaries. Um
So that it could be sustainable
yeah,
for both
yeah.
for both the causes and for yourself.
Yeah.
So what does it look like today? You just won this medal, so tell me a little bit about how now you've been able to incorporate so much of not only you witnessing other people heal, your own journey with healing and yoga practice and what you're doing with your philanthropic conviction work.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that I totally burnt out and had to take several years off doing any activism. And that was really hard because my
Mhm.
identity was wrapped up in it. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately gave me the chance to truly tend my system and understand where I held that tension in my body and befriend
Mm-hmm.
it actually. And so now, I realize that I still care deeply about the earth. And
Mhm.
so I decided last September to join this race. It's called Race Like a Wolf for the Wolf Conservation Center. And it was just a challenge to bike 200 miles in the month and fundraise for them. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. It was my first time deciding to go a little bit to do something for the earth again. And during that time, I was like,
Mm.
I still had all these thoughts like it's not enough.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I'm not on the front lines doing stuff. I'm just biking around, like it's kind of not doing anything. But I was like, these thoughts are just trying to protect me,
Right.
and I've done enough work. It's okay to do something like for
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
myself and for something. It doesn't have to be because I love biking. So this challenge was like, I get to bike and help an organization that's doing awesome stuff.
Win-win.
Like,
Amazing.
why isn't that a good thing? Like,
Did you say
so all these
200
negative,
miles?
yeah, 200
200.
miles in a month, which is a lot.
Yeah,
But
it is.
I've biked, I've biked 1,000 miles in 17 days before. So I was like,
Oh my
Okay.
God.
I
Oh,
get
this
it
wasn't.
done.
Wow.
But everything you're saying, and I'll have to take it and just think on it and feel into it. But it really is bringing up ties back into something you said earlier about that we were talking about about the extremes, right? Like how we can some of us can be drawn to the
Mhm.
extremes, and that's probably not probably is definitely tied to are wounding. And I still experience that very much so in myself, that there's this idea of if it's like the middle road, then somehow
It's not enough.
it's not enough,
Yeah.
right? Or it's
It's that average word you brought up
Yeah.
earlier. You're so
Right.
average. Well, who the fuck wants to be average? Right.
Right.
And my brain is wired so much towards that all or nothing
Same.
mentality that there's
Same.
very little space. And now it is,
you're practicing.
yeah, and practicing, right? It's progress, not perfection, to lean into more average, more middle of the road.
Yeah. And recognizing the power in that. And, so I did this. I signed up for this race. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. It's not something I would have done in the past because it's quote unquote not enough, but I love biking. I love wolves. They need,
Yeah.
they need to be protected. So I'm going to do this and just see how it goes. And
Good
so
synergy.
and I put it out to my community, and I wound up getting third place. I raised the
Hey.
third out of over 700 people.
That's
I raised the
amazing.
number 3 in
Congratulations.
fundraising, and it wasn't even that hard.
Right.
So I'm just like,
Well, but when you say that, how much can we accomplish by?
That's it.
I often, with yoga, in my daily yoga practice, sometimes I will very intentionally go 70% at best, 70%.
yep,
Little over 50, but I'm not dropping in and going as deep as I know I potentially can. And that some days opens up more freedom, more energy, more aliveness, more connected to me, more connected to the present moment. And it's ironic to me that happens when we sort of back off.
yeah. Right. It's another way I learned that exact lesson where it's like less is more.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to go to the extreme. Even if I could have done more, this is plenty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more sustainable. And it brought me joy.
Okay, let's talk about that. Joy. Yes.
Yeah. The work I want to do in this world is more joy.
Yeah.
I want it to bring me joy and the people around me joy. And I'm so good at making other people happy and doing things for other people.
Right. Now you
It's
want
a
it to be an
practice for me.
inside job.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Because you deserve it. Well, we like to
Yeah.
leave our guests with 3 takeaways from each episode. Diana, so what were 3? I mean, I love, first of all, the way that we started with you two and your reconnection. I think that if you have any desire to reach out to someone that you may have been connected with in the past, I think that might
That's a
be
good one.
a cue to do that.
Yeah.
Give yourself permission to reach out.
Yes. What you got, Diana? Number 2.
Oh, I was like, I thought you guys were doing it.
Oh,
I'm
you-
like,
no, we gotta-
What's a second takeaway you want from the episode before our next camera runs out of battery juice?
yeah. A takeaway is to let's see. I want people to know that wherever you are, you can bring in a sense of freedom with where you are, even if you're in pain, even if you're depressed, even if you have anxiety. You can be there and still have some freedom. Like you don't have to change anything. Like building a relationship with yourself as you are is going to give you more freedom than like working on a bunch of stuff and trying to get somewhere and then have freedom.
Yeah. And I like what you said, working on yourself as you are today in this moment with a migraine, post knee surgery, lower back pain problem, like just starting with what your circumstances are in the moment.
And then I'm into the exploring the all or nothing. So if you're finding yourself, if you're like, yeah, like that's me, all or nothing, take some time to be with that and figure out what's underneath that, because there's so much it will be hella
Yeah,
uncomfortable initially, but
big time.
there's so much freedom and sweetness in knowing that you're enough just as you are, and then figuring out what you want to do from that place. So I'm
I
so
love it.
grateful to you. Thank you so
I'm
much.
so excited.
Thank you.
I just can't
Ooh-wee.
hide it.
Yeah, we've been singing a whole lot.
It's
Well, I can't
awesome.
wait to meet you in person.
Yes.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm
You have a
excited.
big online you have a big online presence though. You said, you don't take on other people's energy with your Zoom, and that allows you for a little distance, but I can sure feel you
Totally. Me too.
big time in such a beautiful, positive way through what you share on Instagram that just, gosh, it's very helpful. So thank you for that.
And we'll for sure link up your website and your Insta following. If people want to work with you, what's the
How
best
do they
way for
find
them
you?
to get you?
Yeah, so you can reach out on Instagram or my website. I offer like an intro session if you're not sure you want to work one-on-one, you just want to see if we're a good fit, just book an intro session and we can chat and I can hear about your story and hear about all your pain and injuries and I can see if I can support. But yeah, that's a great way. I love working one-on-one. I love it actually. So
And you're very good at it. Well, thank you. We'll tie everything to the show notes in our bio too for the episode so that people know how
perfect.
they can find
Thank
you.
you.
Love you, cuz.
Love you.
Me